Well, I grew up in New York and had great parents, lived in a great neighborhood. Was never told that I was loved, but we were given all the essentials. We were cared for, we were given food, and we saw our parents together. We didn't go to church. We didn't talk about God. We didn't talk about spiritual things. When I was in high school, I was very good at sports. I had great love for lacrosse and football and baseball, and I really excelled at those things. That got me some recognition. And then women started coming into my life, and I realized that this is a great thing. And all I did was try and have a girlfriend and just get all the satisfaction I could from that, all the attention. I remember the girls would just get fed up with me after a while, and they'd move on. When I was in, I think it was 10th or 11th grade, my father said, "We're getting a divorce." I mean, I was completely devastated that day. After they got divorced, I started to get really bad in school and be just very rebellious. I got kicked off the football team. I started hanging out with the wrong people, got into drugs. I started hanging around with girls that were a lot more promiscuous. I smoked at the time. I drank beer. It was all over my bedroom. And one day I left the house. I drove it around the block to test something, and when I came back, my house was on fire. It was in my room, so it must have been a cigarette butt, that gotten into the carpet or something. The whole upstairs was burnt down. So, from that point, I was already seen as the troublesome child. I was blamed by my grandparents for all these problems. My father was just at his wit's end with me. My mother was mad at me because her clothes got burned. So I came home from work and all my clothes were outside. And my mother had said, you can't stay here. I had friends that had families. I'd go over for dinner, and I would be so filled with anger and resentment towards that whole thing. And I'd want their families to blow up because I just hated the fact that I didn't have that. There were several times that I contemplated suicide. I just said, there is no purpose, no reason, there's no hope. I wasn't brave enough to go through with it. Moments of joy were drug-induced, they were sex-induced, they were alcohol-induced, or where I was getting recognition. So I met my wife, and she was different than a lot of the women that I dated. And Kelly she didn't want to put up with my stuff. Deep down, I wanted to be better for her. And but at the same time, I was very afraid of what was going to happen. Okay, so now I got one who I really like. What happens when she sees inside she's going to be gone? With Kelly, she was starting to see me in a whole different light. And I would put on the nice guy thing for her family. Everybody thought I was a super nice guy, but she saw me behind the curtain. I didn't directly let her know, but I would imply that if you're not going to meet my needs in the bedroom, when and what I want to do, I can go someplace else for that. I was on the verge of physical violence with her. I was exploding. And I can remember the day when we were arguing, and I took her and I just held her up against the wall. And I didn't hit her, but I said, I could. So watch out, because it's coming. And I can't stop it. I don't know why I'm like this. Kelly was wanting to go to church. She had gotten pregnant, and we were expecting. I was thinking, well, I don't want my child to be like me. And I know my wife went to church. She was religious. So I'm going to let my wife take my daughter to church. And for appearance's sake, I'm going to go along with them. Before I thought, you've got to give up everything you like. You got to get really good to go to church. And God's going to only bless you if you follow His rules to the letter, perform for Him. I found that that's not it. We went to different churches, and my wife, she was praying for me the whole time. But she never pushed it on me. And never said, you need to do this, you need to read this book. She knew I was hurting. So we go to North Point, and You know, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. It was Easter 2002, and I didn't even know what Easter was for. I had no idea what Easter was, what Christmas was. You know, one was eggs, one was presents. I sat there and I listened to the message of, you know, Jesus, and everything kind of came together for me. But at the end of the service, Andy Stanley had said, well, if you have been kicking the tires for a while and you really think this is true and your heart's leading you that way, if nothing's holding you back, you know, just stand up. He said that, and I just shot up out of my chair. And I stood up, and I remember looking down, I see Kelly crying. And there's somebody holding her. I don't know who it was. I just feel like this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to her. And it was nothing that I could have given her. And, you know, it wasn't me giving it to her. So Kelly, yeah, she's really the angel in this whole story. She endured a lot over many years and put up with just a very self-focused, self-centered person, very manipulative and borderline abusive. She did what God asked of her to do, and that's to pray for me and to love me unconditionally. And she had held back from getting in my face. And I love that woman to death. I want to go towards God with the same energy that I went away from him. So now I said, he's there. I'm going to pursue him. I'm going to learn about him. I'm going to read about him and have a relationship. You know, one of the things that's important to mention is that I started to connect with God through prayer. You know, I started to just get down on my knees and say, I don't know what to do. I still mess up. I still say the wrong things. I've actually gotten much deeper relationships with people in my life based off of what I don't know and my humility. And, you know, God knows that I can't be humble on my own. And I cannot reach a place where I can just sit on a plateau and say, all right, I got there. Let me put the bumper sticker on my car and, you know, wear the cross around my neck and say, all right, it is done. I'm here. So when, you know, everybody else come on up. You know, I'm still human, and I'm still fallible, and I still need a Savior.